Welcome to the deep dive. We've got a really fascinating mission today.
You really do.
Yeah, we are taking a massive stack of sources. I'm talking historical encyclopedias, theological articles, Franciscan archives, and we're pulling out the most vital insights from the life of Saint Bonaventure.
Who is just this 13th century titan. He basically shaped medieval history.
Right. But, his story completely shatters our modern assumptions. Because usually when we think of a towering medieval intellectual, we picture someone totally detached.
Like locked away in a tower somewhere.
Exactly. Someone reading dusty books, debating abstract philosophy, and just sort of floating comfortably above the messy, real world.
I mean, we assume true wisdom requires distance from the everyday grind, right?
We do.
Yeah.
But stepping into the world of the 13th century Franciscans, it completely shatters that assumption. We're exploring a man whose life is a masterclass in wildly beautiful contradictions.
It really is a profound journey.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because how does a sickly boy from rural Italy grow up to become a cardinal who casually tells papal messengers to go hang his incredibly important red hat on a dogwood bush just because he's too busy washing pots and pans?
That is probably my favorite story about him.
Right. And then how does his head end up perfectly preserved for centuries only to vanish without a trace during the French Revolution? It's wild.
It is wild. And, whether you are a history buff or a philosophy student or maybe just someone trying to figure out how to balance a demanding career with a really grounded, compassionate heart, his life offers a blueprint for you.
A highly relevant blueprint. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, he mastered the art of keeping his intellect firmly rooted in the mud of real life.
So to understand the man, we have to start with a near-death experience. We are going back to the year 1221.
Right, to a town called Civita di Bagnoregio.
Which was in Tuscany.
Yeah, part of the Papal States at the time. And he's born into a pretty well-off family. But his given name isn't actually Bonaventure.
Oh, right. It's Giovanni di Fidanza.
Yes. He was named after his father, Giovanni Sr., who was a physician. And his mother was Maria di Rotella.
And that detail, right, about his father being a physician, that is the linchpin for this whole early part of his life.
It totally sets the stage.
Because as a young boy, Giovanni falls gravely ill. I mean, we're talking about him slipping away almost to the point of death.
Right, it was very severe.
And his father, who is a man of medieval medicine, presumably exhausts all his scientific knowledge. The medical interventions completely fail.
Which had to be devastating for a doctor.
Yeah, exactly. So in sheer desperation, his mother turns to a local man who is already famous for his intense radical holiness, Francis of Assisi.
Yes, the St. Francis.
She begs this wandering mystic to pray for her son.
And the historical records actually tell us that Francis did pray for him.
Wow.
And when the boy made this miraculous recovery, Francis allegedly held the child and exclaimed, "O buonaventura."
Which means what exactly?
It translates from Italian basically to, "Oh, good fortune." Or like, "Good things to come."
I love that.
Yeah, and the nickname just stuck for the rest of his life.
I can't get over the irony of that moment. I mean, you have a father who represents the absolute pinnacle of 13th century science and intellect.
Right.
But the cure comes from a barefoot beggar who relies entirely on unexplainable divine intervention.
It's a total paradigm shift.
If this happened today, it would be like a parent trying every cutting-edge experimental medical treatment, watching them all fail, and then finding the cure in a completely unscientific mystical prayer.
You would never look at the world the same way again.
Never.
You really wouldn't. And that tension, that becomes the defining architecture of Bonaventure's entire psychology.
How so?
Well, that early trauma and the miraculous healing, it bonded him to the Franciscan worldview from childhood. But more importantly, it taught him that intellectual knowledge, like his father's medicine, is essentially useless if it isn't married to faith and divine love.
Which St. Francis represented.
Exactly. He spent the rest of his life insisting that the head and the heart just cannot be separated.
And that deep sense of obligation, it pulls him directly into the Franciscan Order, right, in 1243.
Yes, he's about 22 years old at the time.
And that's when he officially takes the name Bonaventure.
Right. But the order, they don't just send him out to beg in the streets?
No, because they immediately recognize they have an absolute genius on their hands.
Exactly. So they send him to the University of Paris.
Which was basically the undisputed intellectual capital of Europe at the time.
It really was. He studies there under Alexander of Hales, who was one of the leading theological minds.
And while he's there, he ends up crossing paths and becoming friends with another student, someone whose name still echoes today, Thomas Aquinas.
Yes. And they actually both received their doctorates in the exact same year, in 1257.
Two absolute heavyweights of history sharing a classroom.
Right.
That is insane to think about.
It's incredible. But, their approaches to understanding the universe were fundamentally different.
Right, because Aquinas was building his worldview on Aristotle, focusing heavily on logic, categorizing the physical world, pure reason.
Yeah, whereas Bonaventure leaned entirely the other way. The sources describe him as favoring St. Augustine and a more Platonizing mode of thought.
Okay, so to put that simply, where an Aristotelian thinker like Aquinas might look at a tree and categorize its biological parts.
A Platonizing thinker like Bonaventure looks at a tree and tries to understand the invisible spiritual ideal that the tree represents.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, Bonaventure cared deeply about the affections. He believed logic could only take human beings so far. To truly grasp reality, you had to engage the heart, the mystical side of the mind.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. In that same momentous year of 1257...
When he gets his doctorate.
Right. At just 35 or 36 years old, Bonaventure is elected Minister General of the entire Franciscan Order.
Which is a huge deal. He holds that position for 17 years.
But he isn't handed a functioning organization, is he? I mean, he inherits an absolute existential nightmare.
Oh, it was a mess. The movement was on the brink of total collapse.
Because St. Francis had died just a few decades prior.
Right. And the movement had grown from just a handful of guys in the woods to this massive global phenomenon.
And success breeds division.
Exactly. They were fracturing into two incredibly hostile camps.
On one side, you have what they called the spirituals.
Yes.
And they demanded a strict, literal interpretation of Francis's original vision, like absolute radical poverty. No property, no grand monasteries, definitely no universities.
Just wandering, working with lepers and begging.
Right. But then on the other side, you have the pragmatists.
Who are arguing that a global order with thousands of friars needs disciplined structure.
Yeah, they wanted permanent housing, educated leaders, just basic things to survive.
And Bonaventure is tasked with keeping these two sides from completely tearing the order apart.
No pressure.
Right. But he achieves it by steering what historians call a brilliant middle course.
Okay, I have to challenge this, though, because didn't Bonaventure basically just corporatize a beautiful grassroots movement?
I mean, that is a common critique.
Yeah, because Francis wanted his followers to be radical outliers challenging the system. And then Bonaventure takes them, puts them in the University of Paris, builds them monasteries, and mainstreams them. Isn't that a fundamental betrayal of what the Franciscans were supposed to be?
Well, that is the exact accusation the strict faction hurled at him.
I bet.
But let's look at the mechanism of why Bonaventure made those choices.
Okay.
A charismatic grassroots movement centered around one magnetic founder almost always burns out, or devolves into complete chaos once that founder dies.
That's fair. History shows that a lot.
Right. Bonaventure realized that to serve the masses effectively over centuries, radical love needed a sustainable container.
Sustainable container. I like that.
Yeah, he didn't dilute Francis's vision. He translated it into an infrastructure that could actually survive the medieval world.
But how do you convince the strict traditionalists to accept that infrastructure? I mean, a policy memo isn't going to unite a fractured religious order.
No, definitely not. He did it through storytelling.
Storytelling.
Yeah. Bonaventure wrote the Legenda Major, which became the official unified biography of St. Francis.
Oh, wow.
He used this text to carefully curate the corporate identity of the Franciscans.
So he highlighted Francis's intense internal devotion and love for creation.
Exactly. Showing that friars could emulate Francis's holiness through internal humility and study, not just through absolute physical destitution.
It's basically like releasing a definitive founder's biography to settle a dispute at a massive tech company. Redefining the company's core values so everyone can just move forward.
That is a brilliant analogy.
Yeah.
And it works so well that the order stabilized. Historically, Bonaventure earned the title of the second founder of the Franciscans.
That's incredible. And while saving a global organization, he's simultaneously producing some of the most enduring philosophy of the era.
He was a machine.
He writes this major text called The Journey of the Mind to God. And our sources note he was actually inspired to write this during a retreat at Laverna.
Which, Laverna, is a crucial location in Franciscan history.
Why is that?
It's the mountain where St. Francis reportedly received the stigmata.
Oh, the miraculous physical manifestation of the crucifixion wounds on his own body.
Yes. So Bonaventure goes to this incredibly charged mystical site And he develops this philosophy that creation itself is a ladder to the divine.
But he doesn't just mean looking at a pretty sunset and feeling peaceful, right?
No, not at all. He lays out a very specific mechanism for how we should interact with the physical world.
Right, because he actively warned against a concept he called curiositas.
Yes, which translates roughly to empty knowledge.
Like vain, unprofitable trivia pursued just to satisfy our own egos or just to alleviate boredom.
Exactly. For Bonaventure, studying the physical world was a complete failure if it didn't push you up that ladder.
And the sources offer some really wild examples to illustrate this. I mean, Bonaventure would look at the mathematics of music.
Or like a tiny chaffinch bird that can sing 45 distinct notes per second.
Yes, or the fact that there are 287 distinct species of beetles living in the gardens of Buckingham Palace.
Right, but he wouldn't stop there.
Exactly, because step 1 is observing the beetle.
Yeah.
Step 2 is marveling at the insane, intricate biological engineering of the beetle.
But step 3, which is the most important step on the ladder, is letting that amazement point you directly to the mind of the creator who designed the beetle.
He believed every single physical object was a fingerprint of God, basically waiting to be read.
And this speaks so directly to the modern condition.
How do you mean?
Well, we live in an era drowning in curiosities. We just doom scroll on our phones all day.
Oh, guilty.
Right? Consuming thousands of disconnected data points every single hour. We know all the trivia, but we completely lack the meaning.
That hits hard.
Bonaventure argues that when we view the world as just a collection of random facts, we are fundamentally misreading reality.
Wow. It's a theology of immense affection for the world. And that actually earned him a very specific epithet, right?
Yes, the Seraphic Doctor, or Dr. Seraphicus.
Which the seraphim in angelology are the angels closest to God. They're associated purely with burning love and fire.
Right. And he gets this title because his writings prioritize love and the heart over just cold, calculating intellect.
So he argued that reason is a fantastic tool for climbing the ladder.
But eventually, reason hits a ceiling.
Okay.
Only love can take a human being all the way to ultimate truth.
And what's fascinating here is he proved he actually believed this. He didn't just write about it in a dusty book.
No, he lived it.
My absolute favorite anecdote from the sources happens in 1273. So Bonaventure had already declined the powerful position of Archbishop of York a few years prior.
Which is already crazy.
But now Pope Gregory X doesn't ask. He orders Bonaventure to accept the role of Cardinal Bishop of Albano. And you do not say no to the Pope.
No, you really don't.
Yeah.
And it's a staggering promotion. I mean, it places him in the highest echelon of global power.
So the Pope sends high-ranking papal legates to deliver the red cardinal's hat and the insignia of the office.
A huge ceremonial deal.
Right. These messengers travel across Europe, they arrive at the friary, and they ask for the great intellectual powerhouse, the second founder of the Franciscans.
And where do they find him?
Out back, washing the dishes.
He is literally elbow deep in soapy water.
The legates try to present him with this magnificent red hat, the ultimate symbol of worldly prestige.
And what does he do?
Bonaventure looks at them with wet hands and tells them to go hang the hat on a nearby dogwood bush until he finishes his chores.
It's just a stunning visual.
Yeah.
The highest honor of the medieval world, dangling from a branch, waiting on dirty pots and pans.
He later summarized this whole approach to life by saying, "The perfection of a religious man is to do common things in a perfect manner, and a constant fidelity in small matters is great and heroic virtue."
It completely validates his entire philosophy.
Yeah.
The man who wrote that the physical world is a ladder to God genuinely believed that scrubbing a plate with humility and love was just as holy, if not holier, than wearing a cardinal's silk robes.
The mundane and the divine were fully integrated for him.
Absolutely.
But this grounded life gets pulled back onto the chaotic world stage one last time. In 1274, the Pope insists Bonaventure attend the Second Council of Lyon,
which is a massive high-stakes gathering of international church leaders.
The primary objective of the council was monumental, right? To heal the Great Schism and negotiate a reunion between the Greek Eastern Church and the Latin Western Church.
Yes. And Bonaventure, utilizing his eloquence, his theological depth, his deep respect for differing traditions, he was instrumental in those intense negotiations.
He actually helped bring the two sides into a brief union. He did. But at the very pinnacle of this diplomatic triumph on July 15th, 1274, Bonaventure dies suddenly.
Right, at the age of 52 or 53.
And the sources flag something incredibly dark here.
They do.
The 1913 edition of the Catholic Encyclopedia explicitly notes historical rumors of poisoning.
Wow.
Now, modern sources often downplay the murder theory, but the fact that the rumor existed at all highlights the intense, cutthroat political pressure cooker he was operating in.
Definitely. I mean, the Pope himself stood at his deathbed.
And the shockwaves hit the entire Christian world. The official records of the council state that at his funeral there was immense weeping. They noted that God had given him a grace that made everyone who spoke to him feel an overwhelming affection for him.
It's beautiful.
But his death kicks off a centuries-long saga regarding his legacy and, surprisingly, his physical body.
Oh, this part is fascinating.
Let's look at the timeline of his elevation first. In 1482, Pope Sixtus V officially canonizes him as a saint.
Right. And then, in 1588, Pope Sixtus V declares him a doctor of the Church.
Which is a huge deal.
It is incredibly rare. That title is reserved for saints whose personal writings and theology fundamentally shaped universal church doctrine.
So it cemented his intellectual legacy.
Completely.
But the intense veneration of Bonaventure wasn't just about his books. It was about his bones.
Right.
And this creates a fascinating thematic tension. Because Bonaventure taught that the physical world is meant to be transcended, right? Yet his followers became absolutely obsessed with his physical remains. In 1434, exactly 160 years after he died, church officials in Lyon decide to exhume his body to move it to a more prominent church.
Okay.
When they open the tomb, they discover his head is entirely incorrupt.
It hadn't decayed at all.
No.
The medieval accounts insist the hair, the lips, the teeth, and the tongue were perfectly preserved, retaining their natural color after more than a century and a half in a grave.
I mean, for a modern audience, this sounds macabre, but how did the medieval mind process an incorrupt body part?
It was seen as an undeniable physical seal of divine approval.
Really?
Yeah, for the medieval mindset, if a person's soul was perfectly united with God, their physical body might be spared the corruption of death as like a preview of eternity.
Oh, wow.
And it profoundly affected the people of Lyon. They immediately declared Bonaventure their patron saint.
So this exhumation was a massive catalyst for his official canonization.
Definitely. And if you think about it, it perfectly fits his theology. Physical matter acting as a signpost pointing to the eternal.
So what does this all mean for the body itself? Because the fate of that miraculous physical signpost is actually devastating.
It really is.
It doesn't remain safe in a gilded box. During the French religious wars in 1562, the city of Lyon is captured by the Huguenots.
The French Protestants.
Right, who violently oppose the Catholic practice of venerating relics. So they drag Bonaventure's body into the public square and they just burn it.
A catastrophic loss for the local faithful.
They did manage to save the urn containing his incorrupt head, thankfully.
Yeah.
But jump forward to the late 18th century, during the French Revolution.
Oh, no.
Yeah, France is undergoing a radical, often violent de-Christianization. The urn is hidden away to protect it from revolutionary mobs,
Wow.
and it vanishes. It was never recovered, lost to history completely.
Meaning that today, the only major extant relic we have of Saint Bonaventure is the right arm and hand he used to write his philosophical masterpieces.
And that arm is conserved and displayed today back where his story started, in his hometown of Bagnoregio.
Full circle.
Exactly. But despite the destruction of his physical remains, the miracles attributed to him only expanded.
Right, they traveled globally alongside the Franciscan Order.
Yeah, our sources track his influence all the way to the Philippines.
The Spanish Franciscans brought his devotion there, and the local populations embraced it deeply.
In 1664, in the town of Lili in the Laguna province, a statue of Saint Bonaventure reportedly wept tears of blood.
And this wasn't just some fringe rumor, right?
Not at all. It was formally documented by the parish priest and 120 eyewitnesses. They even dedicated their church's first major bell to him.
Wow.
And then in 1759, in another Philippine town called Malban, the town was under attack. Accounts say an unknown man wearing the specific colors of St. Bonaventure mysteriously appeared and defended the town.
Which led the people to credit their patron saint for their survival.
It shows how a 13th century Italian scholar evolved into a literal global protector figure.
It's amazing.
Oh, and I cannot let us wrap up without mentioning one final, highly relatable detail from the encyclopedias.
Please share.
Because Bonaventure suffered from intense stomach issues and illnesses his entire life, he is officially recognized as the patron saint of bowel disorders.
I love that. It brings the lofty Seraphic Doctor right back down to the most grounded, vulnerable human experience imaginable.
It really does. So, synthesizing this massive stack of sources, the theology, the politics, the missing relics, the miracles, how do we summarize the impact of St. Bonaventure?
I think, above all else, Bonaventure was the ultimate unifier.
Certifier.
Yes, he possessed this rare genius for holding seemingly contradictory forces in perfect tension.
Yeah.
He united intense intellectual rigor with profound mystical faith. He navigated the cutthroat arena of international church politics, yet he retained the humility to wash dirty dishes.
Right.
He managed to honor the radical anti-institutional poverty of St. Francis while engineering the structural framework necessary to sustain a global university movement.
We just refuse to see the world in purely black and white.
Exactly. He saw how every disparate piece fit into a grand, divine mosaic.
He found the middle path by elevating both sides, rather than just compromising the core truth.
He offers a compelling model for anyone today, really. He shows us how to be deeply intellectual without becoming cynical, and how to be deeply spiritual without losing touch with the practical realities of managing human life.
Which brings me back to the thought we started with, the tension between the ivory tower and the mud. I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, for you listening, drawing on a specific piece of Bonaventure's philosophy.
Hear it.
Bonaventure theorized that before the fall of humanity, human beings could look at the physical world and read it effortlessly, like an open book.
Right.
Every physical thing pointed obviously and directly to the divine mind that created it. But he argued that our modern gaze, the way you and I look at the world today, has become, in his words, partial, dark, and fragile.
Partial, dark, and fragile.
Yeah. We look at the book of nature, but we've completely forgotten how to read the language.
So true.
So the next time you are looking at something completely mundane, maybe it's a beetle crawling on the sidewalk, maybe it's a bird singing on a fence, or maybe it's just a stack of dirty dishes waiting in your sink.
Right.
Ask yourself, are you just seeing the physical object in front of you? Is your gaze partial and fragile? Or are you willing to look closer and read the grand, hidden architecture of the universe that Bonaventure insisted is hiding right there in plain sight?
It all depends on how we choose to see.
Until next time, keep looking deeper.